Hedonic Method, buying attributes instead of the total house. That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm not an economist, I'm just a mortgage loan officer, but I do follow a lot of economists out there regarding the housing market. Economists off of Zillow, Redfin, and then Housing Wire, which is Logan Mohatshami. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he's a brilliant economist out there. If you ever get a chance, tune into his podcast. It's very interesting. But I'd like to talk to you about another economist. His name was Kelvin Lancaster. He was an Australian mathematical economist. He was a John Bates Clark professor at Columbia University. He applied the hedonic method to the housing pricing market in 1966, and which basically means that people base their choices on price, income, and characteristics of goods, and these characteristics are measurable. The weakness of that theory or method is on many occasions, characteristics of all goods may not be quantifiable. Hedonic method, what is it? Well, the hedonic method demand theory is based on efforts to price dwelling. People buy dwellings attributes rather than the totality of the home. It tries to put a value on each attribute of that home. The hedonic models are mostly commonly estimated using regression analysis, although some more generalized models, such as the sales adjustment grids, are special cases which do not require the regression analysis. I prefer that. Basically, the sales adjustment grids, as opposed to the regression analysis, because it requires less math. Basically, I have nothing against math. I'm okay at math, but if I can get around it, I will. So, anyways, the totality of a house may be more than the sum of its parts. But the visible and quantifiable characteristics like dwelling types, location, size, age, number of rooms, garages are a large enough part of the dwelling section that or selection that we can use them to compare houses. Hedonic prices can be used for three things. They can correct the quality changes in constructing a house pricing index, assess the value of property in the absence of special market transactions data, to analyze the demand for various housing characteristics. Sales comparison. The sales comparison approach relies on the assumption that a matrix of significant features of a property drive its value, which we discussed just previously. In the case of a single-family residence, such features might be the floor area, views, location, number of bathrooms, lot size, and so on. And that basically is why we do the CMA, or the comparative market analysis. See that a lot of realtors do that, almost all of them. It's a good way to compare properties currently in the market. Sales comparison is based upon principles of supply and demand and the principle of substitution. So supply and demand indicates value through the behavior of buyers and sellers. Substitution means a purchaser will not buy a used improved property if they can buy a newer version of that same type of property for the same price. Why buy used when you can buy new, right? Okay. Efficient production, the least cost combination of inputs. Extra marginal output achieved per dollar spent on the input equal to the extra or marginal output achieved per dollar spent on every other input. I know that's a mouthful, and we'll see basically what that means in a second. The quality of land, labor, and capital to produce the attributes of a dwelling. Okay, that's the three things that basically go into the equality of land. Kelvin Lancaster and the two-factor Isoquant. Isoquant, Latin for basically is equal. There was two methods, two theories. This one I prefer because it will arrive at the same conclusion, but it seems simpler to me because it's using two variables as opposed to, I think it's 4 or 5. in the other efficiency model. All possible combinations of labor and capital inputs applied to a given piece of land that produces the same amount of floor space. The Isoquant ratio shows the rate of units of an input, capital, are substituted by units of the other input, which is labor, giving the total output or total output constant, that is. The loss in output as capital is reduced along the isoquant and must exactly be offset by the gain in output from labor as it increases to achieve maximum profit. So Federal Reserve, they met on the 20th of March in 2024. They held key interest rates steady for the 5th consecutive meeting. They are still counting on 3 rate cuts, which is good news. It's thought the first rate cut will probably be in the summer of 2024. And Powell said, fortunately, with the economy growing with the labor market as strong and inflation coming down, we can approach that question carefully, which he basically said carefully, meaning slowly, as far as I'm concerned, and to let the data speak on that. So they're waiting to see how the data comes out here, I think, towards summer, because that's when usually the housing market cyclically will become a lot more robust. So they want to see how that cycle affects inflation, I think. So moving on, they also they want inflation to move from 2.5% to 2%. Economic growth registered at a healthy 2.1%, following 2 straight quarters of growth above 3%. So that definitely means we're not in a recession, right? Because usually a decrease of 2 quarters in a row indicates a sign of inflation. So I think they've squeezed as much out of the labor market as they can. That should be can. And now they must start upping capex, or capital expenditures, because that's what we just talked about. That's what Kelvin Lancaster was talking about with the Isoquant, right? We had labor and then we had capital expenditures. And those 2 variables should play on each other to equal maximum profit. So as the labor market goes down, capital expenditure should go up and vice versa. So the jobless rate edged higher in February to 3.9% from 3.7%, but remains below 4% for more than 2 years. That's a long time. A lot of times, economists say that they want to see that unemployment rate around 5% because it allows the economy to grow a lot easier because people can find jobs, people are trading jobs, and so on. Okay, moving forward, the Federal Reserve, Jan Hatzius, I know I'm not pronouncing that last name correctly, the chief economist of Goldman Sachs, said if job market does weaken more than expected in the coming months, it could change the path of monetary policy. Of course, she's saying that if people just start losing their jobs, you may see them decrease rates a lot quicker than they anticipate. But just from my point of view, I don't think that's going to happen. So rebound in spending in February from January. They say January was decreased in spending because of the weather. And then we're coming out of the holidays, of course. Everybody bought presents and they didn't have any money left. Federal research, economic data, our friend Fred. And that can be found at this URL. This is a really good site. Okay, so here we are on Fred. And it's not the fanciest looking site, but form over function. Okay, so we don't have a lot of form, but we do have a lot of function. And so let's look at the housing and nonprofit organization debt securities. Okay, so this is our loans out there. Okay, this is a really good, let me see if I can increase that here just a little bit. Okay. And so what we're looking at here our households and nonprofit organizations, debt, securities, loan and liabilities, growth rate. Okay, so as we can see, we had a lot of loans going on here right before the crash, right? Right before 2008, 2009, and boom, we hit down here. We went to a negative 6.8. Okay, and then we've been increasing through the new aughts. And through here, we had a little dip, 2014. And of course, 2020, that was a big dip. And then we skyrocketed when all those interest rates were basically free money. It was refi. And then boom. Okay, we went down and now we're creeping back up, right? So we went from basically 2021, 2022, about 8.05 million loans. And then we're coming down here to 2.4. Now that's quite a drop. And we've inched up just a tad to 3.1. And now we decreased to 2.4 again in the fourth quarter, basically December. Of course, so that's kind of where we're sitting at, from our high 2021, 7.8 million loans down to, we've decreased down to 2.4. Okay, so I guess that says it all. Let's look at another chart here. Okay, so I was looking at this one. I like this one here. And let me see if I can increase this one a little bit. Okay, so this is our total capital expenditures transaction. Okay, so we can see this by quarter, and it's comparing the total capital expenditures for 2024 to 2023, right? So 2024 is in the red, 2023 is in the blue. And as we can see right here, and we're looking at the quarter four, 2023, and we can see that capital expenditure is increasing. Now, when that made its way through the market, we talked about our little dip in unemployment. Okay, and we went from 3.9 to 3.7. Small, but it's kind of makes sense when capital expenditure went up just a little bit, caused the labor market to go down. So what happens is they basically squeezed as much productivity as they could out of the labor market, and now it makes more sense to start spending in capital expenditures to maximize that profit. That's what we're talking about, the Isoquant theory, right? Let's see what else we can look at. Here is our corporate business total capital expenditures. Okay, so that's been just going up and up since 2020. Okay, it has been increasing. And then it dipped down here. So basically the labor market tightened up. A lot of money, a lot of overtime, a lot of money was spent on more productive labor, right? And now it's starting to creep back up and labor will go down a little bit. So the Fed, as they said, they want to see that labor market break a little bit. They want to get that labor market. They want to see, I think, 4, maybe over 4. It hasn't been above 4 for the last, I think it's been 4 years or so. Since COVID, I guess. They kind of want to see that go up, so to be a healthier economy. All right. So I think that about does it. If you get a chance, go on Fred. It's kind of fun just to look at all of these charts. They've got a lot of good research here, and just kind of see if you can compare them year to date. It kind of gives you a feel of what's going on with the macro economy. But anyways, that's all I had to talk about today. And remember, if you need any loans or you have any lending that you'd like to discuss in Texas, Oklahoma, or Florida, please contact me at the information below, and I'd be very happy to help you. Have a good day.